That was loud.
No, our technically last date is May.
Okay, just so everybody's aware, we are live. It is now 7 o'clock. You may begin whenever.
And it's time to call the meeting to order. This is the regular council meeting for the City of Prospect City Council.
We can't hear you.
Well, I don't know why.
I can hear you fine.
How about now, Sandra? Hello? No, it's,
Can the others on the video hear? Is it just the courtroom?
Yes, I can hear.
It was John.
I can hear.
It was John we couldn't hear.
It was John that we couldn't.
I can hear.
Well,
let me try again. I'd like
John,
to call the
test
meeting
your
to order.
microphone.
This is the regular council meeting for the Prospect City Council of Prospect, Kentucky on April 19th, 2021. And it looks like we have 1, 2. I see 2 members of the city council. Up at the dais, I see Sandra and Frank, and it might be Don Gibson. Who else is up there?
Doug Barnsley.
Oh, okay. Well, there's the other 4. So everybody's here. We have all 6 council members present. The first order of business tonight is the approval of the minutes of 2 regular council meetings, the one on February 16th, 2021, and the one on March 15th, 2021. Are there any suggested corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve them.
So moved. This is Greg.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Those minutes are approved. Good. The mayor's update. I have a number of things I want to tell you about. First, we have retained Strothman and Company to complete our 2020 audit and to do our 2021 audit. They took over from Stevenson Lawson after that company basically begged off. Strothman's lead auditor for us has given us a timeline of what they will be doing and when, and they expect to complete it by May 31st, which is pretty darn good. Second, we plan to have the 4th of July celebration this year. Included will be the fireworks and the parade and most of the things we're used to. Third, with regard to LDG and their proposed developments, as the Prospect Cove, the Circuit Court has ruled that the Metro Council's rejection of their...
John, excuse me,
Yes.
John, we can just barely hear you. I don't know if you can get closer to your microphone or...
I've got my technical assistant named Sally sitting here helping me. Can you be any better?
It's a little better.
All right, I'll lean in.
And you might go back and repeat the 4th of July part of your report.
Yeah, we plan to have the 4th of July celebration this year. Included will be the fireworks and the parade and most of the things we're used to. Okay. Third, with regard to LDG and their proposed developments, as to Prospect Cove, the Circuit Court has ruled that Metro Council's rejection of their zoning application was not arbitrary and was supported by the evidence. So we won that. There are 2 other pieces of LDG's lawsuit that we are not involved in. One is their claim that Metro Council's rejection of their proposal violated both the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, and the other one is that it violated the Fair Housing Act. The defendant as to both of those is Metro and Metro Council. On the other hand, I've been told that I will have to sit for a deposition as to those claims. Looking forward to that. Let's see. As to the proposed development east of the Marathon Station called the Viridian, there are 2 things going on. One is a couple of lawsuits brought by nearby homeowners. One of those lawsuits claims that the property, and I believe it, was never properly rezoned for apartments. It was done by the fiscal court of the county back in 1973, and they did it with a resolution, which doesn't get you there. The other thing going on is that the consultant, which was hired by some of those residents, has filed a lengthy report describing the historic properties surrounding the site and the adverse impact which the proposed apartment development would have on them, and this would run afoul of federal regulations. So that's what's going on there. Next, I will be meeting later this week with the firm which is doing the evaluation of Putney Pond and the silting that is occurring there. We'll meet either on Wednesday or Friday. Next, I have signed a contract with Milestone for the study of the parking situation around City Hall. They asked a lot of questions and I answered them, and they're at work on that. 6, MSD has, at my request, has undertaken to do a study of the culvert on Hunting Creek Drive and to report back to us what they find. And finally, our accountant's report through March 31st shows that the city is operating under budget by my calculation by more than $300,000. So that's my report. Any questions?
John, did MSD give you any time frame for their study?
No, they did not. I can circle back to them if I don't hear anything soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're dealing with their chief engineer. I forget his name. It used to be Angela Ackridge, but she got promoted to some other position that she's happy with. And this is a new chief engineer. He seems good to work with. Any other questions? Okay. Committee reports. Number 1, John Embry on ethics.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine will be very quick. Intended to be at the March meeting, but I had a situation come up at home that kept me from joining. Just very short, all of the financial disclosure ethics forms were turned in on time and reasonably accurate. There still needs to be a little bit more attention paid to what each section says, but mostly it was something that didn't need to be checked or didn't check something that they should have checked. Other than that, we are still short an alternate member. And so I guess we're looking for suggestions for a resident of Prospect which might fill that role. And I'd be happy to discuss that with anybody who needs to know what the requirements are. And finally, this is not an election year, so hopefully if there's no issues for the balance of the year, you won't hear from me again until the Ethics Commission final report in January. And that's it. And nobody has any questions. I'll mute and stand back and watch for a little bit.
All right, thank you, John. I guess there aren't any questions. Next, who is giving the Parks and Recreation report?
I'm giving it for Linda. Let's see, ICF is the company doing the Putney Pond study. They have completed the vegetation study. And sometime this week or next week, Bob Hawley and ICF, I think Ron and the mayor are going to meet up to do a walkthrough of Putney Pond to go over some of their initial ideas and run that by those guys. Invasive plant removal has already started and is ongoing. Earthbound Landscape is the company who does Orange Trail, the gravel work to stabilize the hill out in Harrods Creek Park. Those guys are ready to go. The recent rains, there's still a little bit of drying left to do. They were going to do it right before that happened. We got the large rains about a week and a half ago or so. So as soon as that area is completely dried out for them to work and there's no forecast of rain, they will be able to accomplish that. Let's see, Jacqueline Grail and Linda went out, Jacqueline McGrail, sorry, and Linda went out and sprayed some of the volunteer work for invasive plants, and that's the poison hemlock. So thank you, Jacqueline, for doing that. And Ron has updated a bird brochure for residents who can go out and on their own do a bird walk. And the idea is Ron scaled those down and worked out a nice product to be able to put in the kiosks by the park, and people will be able to reference those. There's also some bluebird boxes in the works to be able to put out on the Orange Trail so that people could maybe be able to see those, as it's kind of an ideal environment. The scouts are not up and running yet, but we do have a list of projects that we're ready to help those scouts get up to Eagle Scout to get their projects done. So as soon as that works its way forward, Lynn will let us know. And I think that is all for the parks right now.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the Forestation Board, and that would be Lee Tucci. Welcome back, Lee. Lee.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. I'd like to begin by remarking that Thursday is going to be Earth Day. It's actually the 50th year that Earth Day has been celebrated, and Prospect can be proud of the fine parks that have developed in recent years, but the planting of hundreds of trees, which are well recognized as being very beneficial for the environment. Now, in our little world, the new trees for Cawley and Honey Creek Drive are supposed to be planted this week. If you drive around Cawley, you can see flags, little white flags, marking their location. Our consultant, Andrea Hanlon, is surveying the city-owned ash trees, determine which should be treated with emerald ash borer, make sure that they're in good enough condition from other problem factors to be worth the investment. And as I noted in my report, which every person should have, the UK recommends treating these ash trees for a few more years. On other little activities, dangerous trees or declining trees, Honey Creek Country Club has agreed to take out a declining white pine you can see along Honey Creek Drive near the top of the hill. Also, a dead ash at Montero and Deep Creek will be taken out by the property owners. And Forestation Board authorized the removal of city-owned declining blue spruce on the first median as they go into estates on Westover. And actually, the maintenance department already planned to revamp that median. They'll take care of that spruce as part of their program. Also noted, the residents donated or will donate $300 for a memorial tree that's going to be planted in Honey Creek Park this fall. That'll be another swamp oak. The ones down there have held up well, and they're well recommended for that kind of situation where occasional can occur. And we'll be having a newsletter article coming out in the city news, focuses on tree planting resources that are available through Trees Louisville. And our major activities the next week or two will be to update our goals for the annual tree plan. And some of the goals will likely include beginning a speakers program using guest specialists. That would probably be in the fall when we have access to the library as a meeting place. Determining a way to share tree planting costs with the residents, and Herb Schwarfer is working with Chris on that to make sure we have a legal method. We'll be meeting probably later this week to develop some specifics. And then, of course, we plan to work with the parks and with the council on beautification and security using forestry trees in the Honey Creek proposed playground next to City Hall. That's the main part of the report. Any questions?
Lee, I don't hear any. I guess that was such a
Okay,
good
thank
report
you.
that we don't need to ask you any questions.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you. On my agenda, it says library and history book. We haven't had the opportunity recently, but Sandra, is there anything to report?
In regard to the library, as you know, we have to purge our shelves usually 2 to 3 to 4 times a year because we have so little space, and we've started that now. I've got some lovely volunteers who are helping to do it. And the other item in the library is we can't wait for our used book sale, and it's beginning to look like we'll be able to do it the end of June. In regard to the history book, we hope everybody is getting their shots because we cannot wait until we get to herd immunity in Kentucky, and all of the things that have been closed to us for the last year will be reopened. As most of you know, we exhausted everything that was available online years ago, and the bulk of what we've been able to do is to have in-person interviews and look at some of the historical repositories around the state. Both of those have not been possible during the pandemic. So please get your shots and encourage other people to do it. That's it.
Any questions for Sandra? Okay. Greg, do you want to give, or is Herb, you're going to give the report on the U.S. 42 safety study, right?
Yes, sir. Okay, name's Herb Schulafer, and I chair the working group for the US 42 Safety Improvement Project. And I've got good news. Our next step was to receive the memorandum of agreement from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And we received it at about 11:30 today. So our next step is for the mayor and city council with their attorney to review that and hopefully to carry it forth to get it approved. After that is done, then we'll be in a position to put out an advertisement for the planning consultant that will work with us for the planning study. Is there any other questions?
Greg, do you have any?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Herb.
Okay.
Herb's a good man. Police report, Chief Gerard. There he is. Well, there he was.
Microphone's on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The house checks are up, so everybody's at least moving about again. We were over 4,000 for the month compared to just 3,200 for last March, so that's good. Most of the other activity pretty much resembles the previous year, nothing there. Just as you've probably heard on the news, the internet fraud with unemployment claims throughout the state and everywhere, well, they've hit Prospect with a vengeance. Just last month alone, we had 11, and that's just uncanny for us to have that many of them. And it comes in 2 forms that we get notified. Well, obviously the resident notifies us, but they're notified 2 different ways. They either get a letter from the state of Kentucky, the unemployment office, that says someone, or we understand you filed a claim, or it comes in the form of an employer contacts them. Their employer says, we've been contacted by the state and someone has filed an unemployment claim on your behalf, yet you're still working. So those are the 2 ways that people are notified that someone has fraudulently attempted a claim on their behalf. And none of these cases does it appear that anybody's ever received any money or whatever. So we do write a little bit of a report because a lot of times they have that that service that you can purchase was it LifeLock or one of them, and they require a report of some kind for their service. And then anyway, we recommend that most of these people, they contact all the credit bureaus just in case, to contact the 3 credit bureaus. And as a safety precaution, it's pretty wise to just go ahead and freeze your credit for a while in the event that somebody did have some sensitive information. And that way, nobody can really do anything with their private information. They can't open accounts or whatever if you freeze your account. A couple of the other reports we had, there was one involving a stolen check. However, as it turned out, the check was stolen elsewhere out in Metro Louisville, but they just cashed it over here at the PNC in Prospect. That's how we got involved, as the check was actually cashed here, stolen elsewhere. We had one that, and it's listed in 3 different spots, so it's deceiving, under the arrest column, under the felony column, and under the JC3. JC3 is usually a report that's filed along with domestic violence. This is all the same case. This was a domestic situation in which an ex-boyfriend used to be a live-in. They haven't been together for a while. He ends up essentially breaking into the house of the ex-girlfriend. She comes home and he's in the house. Now, there's no further violence or whatever. He's just trying to get back together with her. But technically, he's committed a burglary. And so all those other reports get filed along with the main one. So it looks like we've had 3 different incidents here, but under state law, we have to file 3 different reports. So when it comes back here, Jill doesn't really understand how all that works. So it's pretty confusing if you just grab this report here. It looks like we've had 3 different incidents, but that's actually only one thing that occurred. It was that one domestic incident. And there was actually no violence involved in it. He just came into a place that he's not entitled to be there.
Did he get booked?
He was booked. And ironically, the next day, he showed up at headquarters that morning. He was already gone before I got here. But he thanked everybody for the way that he was treated the night before, and was complimentary of the police and how professional they were. Even though they took him downtown and booked him for burglary, he was very thankful of the police department and how he was treated, which is rather unusual. In terms of reports, there's really nothing else that was substantial. We did our part-time officer starting April 1st, Chris Hagan, he replaced Steve Bailey, who left last year. We had that spot vacant for a while, but anyway, Chris Hagan filled that spot. He started April 1st. He retired from Louisville Metro. He had about 21 years there. Really nice guy, gets along well with everybody. That is all I have.
What's the suspicious activity on March 4th? Obviously not important, but.
Yeah, that one, that was unusual. A lady hears a noise downstairs from like the back patio. And when the police go there, when they get there, there appears to be a crack or a break in the back window of the patio. But when they got there, it was an unusual thing, and they believe that perhaps a deer may have crashed into the back patio window. Couldn't tell that it looked like an attempted break-in, but it sort of looked like, and there'd been a lot of deer activity in the area. It backed up to like the golf course, I think. So they got there and they just thought it just looked really strange. And the way that it bent the frame on there, that it didn't look like a standard, like an attempt to break in, get it at an entry point where somebody would use a pry tool or whatever, sort of bent the frame, and they thought perhaps that maybe a deer ran in. That's what the report said.
Do we have any plans, or are you thinking about what's going on downtown tonight?
I don't have any or anything. Any specific plans other than.
You think it'll be tonight?
Oh, I can't imagine that they would come back. Just got the thing at 4:05.
Late this afternoon.
I understand. understand they're congregating downtown.
They've been congregating for several weeks. We just don't hear anything about it because not a lot goes on with it. They've been right for weeks. Yeah, there's a way that we can put some stuff up on the videos. Tony Denham texts me all the time and says that they're, they do take a more proactive stance when they're out blocking intersections and stuff. They are aggressive stance and they're arresting people and not allowing people to block streets anymore. So,
Okay, ready to move on?
I am.
Okay, unfinished business. The first item is ordinance 606-2021, which is an ordinance relating to the amendment and modification of chapter 114.30 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Prospect concerning designating who shall serve as the city ABC administrator. That ordinance has already had a first reading. Does anyone want to move for its adoption?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Take a roll call. Sandra?
Yes.
I thought so. You moved for it. Frank?
Yes.
Doug? Doug Farnsley? Did you speak?
Yes.
Okay. I can't see who else is there.
Don Gibson.
Don's there.
Oh, hi, Don. How do you vote?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Unanimous. Okay, so that has passed. New business. Municipal Order 3-2021, an order consenting to the appointment of Assistant Police Chief Tony Denham as ABC Administrator for the City of Prospect. Is there a motion to enter that order?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimously passed. Next, Municipal Order 4-2021, an order consenting to the appointment of Sylvia Quay to the Forestation Board and affixing a term of office thereto. I might say that Sylvia has been serving on the Forestation Board for, Lee, help me out, it's been a year or more. And I would encourage the adoption of that municipal order. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
In a second.
I have a question. Her term expires this
Can you,
coming December.
can you wait on your question until we see if there's a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Sandra, what is it?
Why is her term expiring December of this year?
I don't know. Lee?
Actually, I believe I can address that question. Their terms are for 3 years, and she first started serving provisionally in February of 2019, so 2021 makes her third year.
So we're just validating it?
No, it sounds like what we're doing is taking her from provisional to regular status.
Yeah,
Okay, shouldn't we have said that somewhere?
well, I think looking back that it shouldn't expire the end of this year. She's never formally been appointed. That's why we're having this municipal order.
Oh, so we didn't appoint her when she went on in 2019? Is that what we're saying?
As I recall, she was appointed provisionally.
Well,
I
there you
agree.
are.
I thought we appointed her also.
As I recall, we were awaiting a resume and I don't
No,
know
we've
if
had the resume. We've had the resume for a while.
no, I mean initially. And I think we just never did vote on it, so. I think that's where we are.
It's been moved and seconded. Are you ready to vote on it now? All in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, now the last two items on here are going to take some more time. The first one is Municipal Order 5-2021, an order approving the adoption of a personnel policy for employees of the city of Prospect. Laura, would you like to start off speaking to that before we go any further?
All I have to say is that since Greg wanted to make this a discussion only issue, Andrea Schindelbauer Main is here from KLC to address questions or concerns or anything else related to the personnel policy.
Thank you, Laura. John, could I be recognized, please?
Sure.
And I'm really glad that representative from KLC is with us. I do want to say that when we first spoke about this, I guess it was 2, maybe 3 meetings ago. And at that time, we did get into it a little bit. And we had the services of KLC at that time too, to provide some direction to us. And then since that time, we had a subgroup that was formed that went off and did some work. And I know that work was well done as well. My concern is that I'd like to address it tonight as only a discussion item. And I say that because we never have really spent any time in discussing what our objectives are with this. And I really want to kind of pull the rest of the council out to see what they think about this. But my idea is to kind of back up a little bit and re-begin the process with the idea that we would take it, we would break it down into components. And I know that would take some time, but I'd rather do it right because our decisions affect the attitudes of our employees. Our decisions affect the costs of our city and really set the standard for a whole lot of things as we go forward. So I just want to make sure that we're looking at the right things and doing the right things in this rather complicated policy. So I'd like to get the rest of the council's opinion on that and see what they feel about it. Another concern that I have is I want to make sure that we know that the practices that have been put in place are commensurate with the policy, just to make sure, and if there are any exceptions to that, that we align those correctly and appropriately to the policy. And so I was just thinking that we would take our time and go through it. And certainly the subgroup can help us with this as well as we go through it. But we would go through it and then come back with KLC and see what they think about our changes. So I'll open it up to comments from the rest of the council on what they think of that idea.
Very good.
Anyone?
All right, this is Frank. I agree with you, and your email on the subject, I think is right on point. As a matter of fact, to me, this is a situation that where the council should consider hiring their own consultant, a compensation consultant that will give us unbiased data where we can make a reasonable decision relative to not only salaries, but all of the benefits that have been put forward. And I say that not because I don't trust anybody else, but I think we need an independent look at what other people are doing and have more variation, or not variation because that's the wrong word. Let's see, input in areas, data that deals specifically with things that are more closely related to our city. Demographically, geographically, the types of utilities, some cities have the power plants, some of them do their own water, some do their own cities.
Well, and some of them don't have police. I see what you're saying.
There's a whole bunch of variables that someone who is professionally acquainted with this type of thing should give us some direction. And I think it should come through the council as opposed to the administration, because regardless of intent on the people we have, and they're all good people, I think that we need a hands-off from the administration in this thing.
I can see that one of, whether I agree with Frank or not is not relevant to what I'm saying. I think that what Greg talked about when he talked about breaking it down into components makes a whole lot of sense. And since it was Greg's idea, I wonder if he'd like to spearhead something like that.
I would be happy to, and I'm open to any suggestions. I guess I have to ask a question first. The initial policy that we were provided is the 2020 edition. And so that's what I went off of a couple of months ago when we first started getting into it. And in our packet, which we received a couple of days ago, I now have a 2021 edition. So I've not read through this. It's just way too much to read. So I guess my first question is, are there any changes between the 2020 and the 2021? And Laura, I guess you're the one to ask that. Are there any changes between the two copies?
Actually, Andrea is the one who did that change. The most significant changes are those related to things like vacation and sick leave, which I had sent out to all of you all as separate excerpted sections previously. The other changes that are in there, which Andrea handled, are, I would say, they're mostly cosmetic changes. Issues related to word choice, that sort of thing. We did go back and forth over the drug and alcohol policy and the DOT CDL language that Andrea ended up taking out, since we don't have anyone that really applies to. But most of the changes, other than those related to vacation and sick leave, are pretty superficial.
Well, since I haven't gone through the 2021 handbook yet, the 2021 edition, but I have gone through the 2020 edition, and I have remarks on all of the changes that we thought that existed at that time. So, but I think really, I'd like to just go back and look through the whole thing now. Because if there were changes that were made to it, and I'm open to other comments here, whatever you all think, but since some changes have been made to it, I think I'd like to go through the entire document and just make sure that it is what we all want. And if there is a change that needs to be made, I'd be afraid that we might miss it if we didn't cover everything. Now, I'm not excited about going through with all this, but there's 141 pages here. But
Well,
I do think it's...
I'm sorry, the
Go
other
ahead.
component of change is not the change from 2020 to 2021. It is the change from our existing policy, because 2020 was a proposal. So we really need not just to look at the proposal, we need to look at what we were doing.
Very good.
I agree with that.
Agree.
I think that would be helpful to me to know what the baseline is and where are we making changes. To your point, Greg, in looking,
Is that she's with the KLC.
looking back at page 99, page 100, it looks like they're track changes. And I'm guessing, Laura, those may be track changes from the previous draft.
I believe that is the case. I don't have it.
I know what he'll say. I don't know what he'll say.
Ron, can you mute that other participant?
Who?
Sorry, I said I don't have the policy in front of me. But there are, in what I printed out for y'all, you can still see where there are track changes from the changes that Andrea made, because this is still a draft document.
Laura, can you correct something for me? To my knowledge, we have the prior / current policy that was sent out a couple months ago. And then you sent out a couple, it's at least been a couple weeks, the proposed changes that are in this document, all the ones that pertain to what the council would approve for budget. Those are what I was looking at as what is the complete set of information, but it sounds like other people don't have that, or maybe it's my misunderstanding.
Or
Are
what
those
you've got
documents,
is
those are,
it's not going back to the last document that was enacted by the city council. That's a possibility too, and we don't know the answer to that.
But there's
Laura,
also,
did you hear the
there's
question?
also no baseline, no data that we can compare it to. Heck, we might be underpaying our people considerably.
Can somebody let Laura answer the question? I just want to know from her email that we received if the info she sent out as the prior/current policy, if that's accurate. That's all I'm trying to figure out.
Right. Those separate pages that I sent out about a week and a half ago, those are sections pertaining or that involve compensation, which are really those that most involve council because they can impact the budget.
And when you originally sent out the document, I think for our November or December meeting, there was what we're doing currently. I have 2 quotes around that. What we're doing currently. Is
right.
That accurate,
I took that is what we're doing currently that is what is in the policy that is currently in place that we've been following since 2014 with some minor adjustments.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions. So do I need any data for prior to 2014? And then the second question is for Ms. Schindelbauer, Maine from KLC. My understanding is that as part of us paying member services to KLC, that she is actually helping us with information about peer cities and things like that. Now that could be a misunderstanding, but those are my 2 remaining questions.
Well, as far as your second question, I can say that we did sign a contract with KLC 3 years ago when we first undertook this project, and that they would provide their expertise and their knowledge about what other cities are doing in helping us draft this document. As far as prior to 2014, I think I have found one older personnel policy, possibly 2, but the files on them are pretty sparse.
And I'm not sure I personally need that, but my own personal stance on it is I'm not sure that we've used Ms. Schindelbauer Maine to that full potential. I'm not sure that we've asked her a question. And so I would not support hiring an outside agency just to say we hired them until we've talked to Andrea, if you don't mind me using your first name, until we've talked to her and used her advice and used, she's not out to get us. She's not out to swindle anyone. I don't want to speak for you, Andrea, but so that's just until we've used her, I'm not sure that we've really explored what knowledge we have available. That's my piece.
Right. Well, as far as benefits go, absolutely. What we do a benefits survey to cities every 2 years. So, we gather data from all sizes of cities. So I have that information that's come in from cities your size, from Jefferson County, from all over. And I'm always more than happy to contact cities, even if you have specific cities that you're interested in me talking to see what they have as far as benefits. Now, as far as compensation for your employees, that is not something that I can do. It's something I wish we could do, but it's not something that we offer at this time. If that's something that you all are interested in doing, a compensation study, I can, again, we have a wage and salary survey, and I apologize, my dogs are wanting to join in. But I do know of several companies that do work with cities, that do great work with cities as far as providing compensation information for employees of cities. And they do it at a reasonable price. That's very important to us, that we make sure that we find people that do, because some of these places are extremely expensive, which is one of the reasons I wish it was a service that we provided. So if that is something that you all decide that you're interested in at some point, I'm happy to give you a list of names that you all could contact and get information from. And I do want to say, as far as this policy, I actually did make one more change that you all are not aware of. And that's because the General Assembly made a change this year to the adoption leave. So I did have to make one minor change to your adoption leave section. They actually changed the age of children that are being adopted from 7 to age 10. So I did make that change in the draft that I have.
So, Andrea, thank you. Well said. And we are certainly glad to have you with us. We really do appreciate you and, of course, KLC. So I guess the question is, if the changes that have been made to the 2021 edition are changes that we have to make, and I think that's what you're saying, Andrea, that we're required by law to make, then no use us going back and revisiting all of those. But if the
I don't
changes.
think that's what she said.
Okay.
I think
and-
she
but I
only
was just-
said in that one specific area. In terms of things like the leave policy and whatnot, there's no legislation passed with that.
Right. So that's exactly what I was going to say. So, but if there are other things in there, then my concern is that for us to do a good job, we really need to go back to what we had and say what we now want as compared to what we have. And I think a part of that would be if there have been any changes that we have made, management has made, as far as maybe setting a precedent or any kind of practices that might be going on, we need to know what those are. So I hate to say it, but I really would like to go back to the policy, whichever the latest one is, not the 2021, but the latest one that had the approvals from the council, the one that we've been living by all these years. And then what changes have there been made to that by past practices or current precedents? And then I think we need to go through the painstaking task of looking at those. And then, and I'm open to comments. And then, but along with that, I think it would be good for us to have a discussion, and maybe we could do that just tonight. Maybe we could concentrate on that just tonight. And that is to exactly what are we wanting to achieve? Earlier, Sandra mentioned there's some cities that we are in competition with, and there are some cities that we're not in competition with. So we run the gamut from, so what do? Do we adhere to the legal requirements? Or in some cases, do we go beyond that because we want to and we feel a need to for our city? So, but I think the bottom line is, what do we want for our city? And what cities compared to us or might be in competition with us? Certainly, we want to retain our employees. So we want to make our standards appropriate. So I'll just shut up and open that up. What do you all think about that? Going back to the original and going through it.
Actually, I agree with you. What I said a long time ago was that when we look at KLC's data, it's very helpful. But we're basically not in competition with the entire state of Kentucky. We're in competition, if you will, with the other similarly sized cities in Jefferson and Oldham County. And all of the cities, as I've said many times, are unique. And that's why picking up a tiny city doesn't benefit us, because there's no competition. Most of them don't have much in the way of employees. Others, as was mentioned earlier, others have utilities, we don't. A lot of them do not have police forces. And so just picking up general data is very often not beneficial. And that's why I think that I agree with Greg. I think that this is something we should be doing methodically, and we should be doing it with real data and not generalities.
Anybody else? So, so for us to do that work, Laura, what do we have the policy that we need to look at? Because I'm confused a little bit. It can't be the 2021 edition because changes have been made to it that we haven't looked at yet. Is it the 2020 edition that we had, or is it something else? I'm at a loss right there.
If I'm hearing you correctly, what we're operating under right now is a hybrid because the practices of the 2020 were adopted by executive order last fall, but we are still going by the compensation, the leave, and those types of benefits as laid out in the 2014 policy, because that is what had been in effect, and we were waiting for council to act on those matters.
Actually, one of the things that we could start with are the policies, or whatever word we want to choose, because that may not be totally appropriate. If we could have a list of what you've enacted, that by itself would narrow down what we're looking at. Is that a possible request?
If you know the copy that I distributed to all of y'all in December, and some sections are highlighted in yellow. So anything that's not highlighted in yellow, that's what's been enacted.
Okay, that's a good start. Thank you.
Laura, it's Doug Farnsley. So to follow up on my comment earlier, I saw that there were track changes at pages 99 and 100 and around that area. Are those track changes from the previous document that you gave to us?
Let me
what
see.
are they changes from, or do you know?
Right, those are the proposed changes to vacation and sick leave that were agreed upon in a meeting between Mayor Evans, Don Gibson, Sarah Odell, and myself back in March, and then sent out to all of you for consideration. So those are changes from what was distributed in December.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, but those in December were proposals.
Well, these are proposed revisions to the proposals. Yeah. And that's what there was an additional attachment in that email that there were tables in there, and one of them had what's in our current, or what's in the 2014 policy. That's what we're going by. And then what was originally proposed in December, and then the changes that are proposed from the meeting in March.
I'm really glad that Doug asked the question about the pages 99 and so on, because that was confusing to me too, but now I understand where that came from. So I will go back and say that I'd really like to re-begin the process. And I think that the best way to do that, and this is similar to what Sandra was saying, is to go back to the policy that we had that's actually the 2020 policy. And even though it might be painstaking for some of us who have already been through this and made their recommendations, and thank you very much, but none of the rest of us, I'm sorry, have had a chance to comment on those. So I think because of its size and complexity and importance, I think all 6 of us need to talk about it at the same time and get our concerns out there. So I would propose, if it's okay with everyone, that we go back and use the 2020 edition as our baseline, and then build our comments from that, and take a section of it at a time. And I'm open for.
I don't have any trouble with that, but I don't think we can use the 2020, because we still need to deal with what the last thing the council approved, and that isn't the 2020. I think we should be comparing the 2021 to what existed prior to the 2020 being proposed.
All right, Sandra, if we're going to take that literally, going back to the last personnel policy that council approved, you are literally going back to 1990. I went through the history, and that was the last personnel policy that was approved by council. After that, so they were always adopted by executive order.
All of the leave policies that have been granted since 1990 were granted without council approval. Is that what you're saying?
That is what the records tell me.
Okay, if that's true, then I think that what Frank proposed is even more important. Because that means there has been no outside data that has come into play in the decision since 1990.
I don't know if I can answer that question.
No, I understand. That's
Mayor
not a fair
Everly
question.
is here and he may be able to speak as to whether he consulted outside sources, because I believe there was at least one revision during his tenure. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Thank you very much, Laura. I don't really have any recall.
But you did.
It was 11 years ago,
Kentucky League of Cities.
but we did work with the Kentucky League of Cities.
It sounds
Well,
like
then I kind of go back to.
And with Andrea. And who's our legislative, I'm trying to think of his name now. He's still with you.
Are you thinking of JD Cheney?
Yes, JD Cheney.
Yeah, JD Cheney, yeah.
Yeah, I think back then, pretty much what we did was just hand out samples from other cities.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so changes have been made over the years. And it sounds like the best document that we have, though, and it sounds like finding those changes or determining what those changes were over these many years is going to be almost impossible. So
No, it
do
sounds
we
like we
just,
have to use the 2014.
the 20, yeah, let's use the 2014.
The 2014 and the 2021, because the 2020, if we can look at the yellow areas and see if we agree with them, but other than that, we don't need to do anything with that one. We need to go from what has been practice to proposed practice. And that's the 2014 and the 2021.
But we need a concrete frame of reference for the numbers.
I think we need, I don't disagree with that, but I think what we need to start with is figuring out, if we get a concrete frame of reference, what are we going to ask that concrete frame? And I don't think we're beginning to be there yet.
Well,
I
yeah,
don't think we have.
we have to frame the matrix
I agree.
of our understanding of what our city is versus
I agree.
comparable cities.
I agree. But I don't think.
And that's that to me, that's a vital missing
Well, that's a
link.
first step. I agree with what you've said. But I think, well, I think to take a month to get there makes sense.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think to some extent, that's what Greg is asking for.
Yeah, biting it off in small chunks. I think that's what you're saying, Greg. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with that.
I agree with you too.
So as I understand it, the 2020 edition that we worked from a few months ago shows us what the policies and procedures were that were in place, regardless of how they got enacted.
No, it doesn't. See, that's the whole problem. The part of that was considered not the responsibility of the council.
But I'm not, that's a distinction I'm not making. Let me finish my point,
Okay.
Sandra. Because I understand what you're saying. Regardless of how we got to the 2020 edition, whether it was by executive order or by the council acting, that was in place, minus the yellow, highlighted in yellow changes. They were changing what was in place either by executive order or by council action. And so unless we're going to argue or take the position that what was done by executive order is somehow questionable or invalid, seems to me we've got in place a baseline in that 2020.
In regard to the things that are not the council's responsibility, I agree with you. In regard to the things that are the council's responsibility, I don't.
Okay, and I don't know the distinction, so,
Okay.
but I understand what you're
Basically,
saying.
we're in charge of money.
Well, that brings an idea into my head. So if we use the 2020 report, handbook, then regardless of what had transpired over the years, we would come across it in this handbook, whether it was in 2014 or not. It would still be in this book, would it not? It would still be in this book.
Not
So-
if it was something like leave policy, because in regard to leave policy, the 2020 is a proposal. It's not an enacted
That's interesting.
situation.
Well, I'd be happy to work on it with someone. I think I need some time to think about this and come back at the next meeting. But I'd be happy to work with someone or the ones who have been working on it already. But I think we need to find out what the 2014 said. Is that possible, Laura?
I'll email it to you tomorrow. Or actually, I'll print out a copy and give it to you at the meeting tomorrow morning.
If anybody keeps their council packets, it was printed in the January 11th packet. It's also in the council emails, and Laura sent it twice. So I actually have 3 iterations of it, just FYI, for the 2014 and 2020.
Then I have it then. I just forgot. Thank you. That's good.
Yeah,
You don't
no,
need to
that's
do
fine.
that, Laura.
Yeah, it's fine. The only thing that it's my recommendation is, I did go back and listen to the January council meeting for this discussion. And we are ending it in the same spot that we ended it in January. And so my only recommendation, because it does seem like, Frank, you have a passion about it. Sandra, you have a passion about it. Greg, you have a passion about it. I'm passionate about it, but I've talked through my piece. So I somebody else needs to do some working, but is that something of action occurs tonight? And by action, I mean some kind of plan, whether it's at the next council meeting, this is exactly what we'll do, or before the next council meeting on this date, this is what we'll do. That's just my recommendation, is that we got here from January, I think we'll chat about it later. And I just throw that out there.
And I just want to offer that anytime that you all are having a meeting, I am more than happy to be available to talk through any of these policies. Again, I have no agenda at all. I'm happy to, help you all talk about different ideas, go through the policy, page by page. I'm more than happy to do that. So if that helps you in any way, you just let me know the time, the date, and I'll be available.
Thank you.
That's very gracious of you. Thank you.
Andrea, this is Frank Fulcher. A question. Do you feel there's validity to my concerns relative to baselining salaries and benefits to comparable cities?
I think a lot of cities do that. They'll work with companies that do, especially for compensation. Our wage and salary survey, unfortunately, we don't get every city to respond. I think the last survey we may have gotten 75%. I mean, we got a pretty high amount. It was a pretty good survey, but still, it's tough to get everybody to respond. So, paying somebody to actually go and get those figures is probably, the best way to get, when you're talking about someone's salary, I think that's really important to make sure you're paying the best wages for your employees, and getting the best benefits for your employees. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's much better than in a free service that you can get. And again, I'm happy to go through our data. I'm happy to talk to our research department and say, here's the cities that I want you to pull and tell me, what benefits they're providing. So I'm happy to go through and pull cities your size, or you even tell me what cities do you want me to look at? And we can
Actually, I went and did a list, which I can share with my council members a day or two ago, and I basically pulled similar size cities, some a little bit bigger, some a little bit smaller, in Jefferson and Oldham County. And I can share that list with my compatriots, and if they basically agree with it, we could send that to you.
That'd be great.
That's a good plan.
I'm perfectly happy that Andrea is available at each and every meeting, if that's okay with the rest of the council. I was thinking, Andrea, that we wouldn't sort of bother you until we got to the end of it, but if you're available, it certainly would be good to have you along the way.
It is not a problem at all. I would much rather, I don't want to intrude on your meetings, but, if you want me there, I will be there in whatever capacity you need me.
Well, you're a definite asset, so I, for one, would love it if you would be there, if that's okay with everybody else on the council. And also, with respect to my fellow council members who have been working on this, I know you've done a great job, and I don't mean to push that aside. But I'm thinking that it would be good for us to go back and make sure that we're looking at everything from the beginning, and as far as we can go back as 2014. So let's do that. And I don't know how you all want to proceed. I'd be happy to look at it over the next few days and then email all of you. And if anybody wants to work with me on it, that would be great. Or if somebody else wants to do it instead of me, that's okay too. I'm open for comments on that, on how best to proceed.
Actually, I'll be glad to help you. I've already started.
I was talking and I was muted. I'm sorry. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, Sandra, thank you so much. I guess that's it. I know Sarah made the comment that she'd like to have something done tonight, but I think we have accomplished something, and I appreciate the actual re-beginning of it. I feel good about the process going forward, that we're all going to be talking about it together as we go through it, and that we're looking at it going back to 2014. So I feel like that's a good accomplishment myself.
Well, if the council is finished with this subject, we can move to the last item on our agenda, which is resolution number 1, series 2021, a resolution committing to a 50% match of land and water conservation fund assistance, if awarded, to develop a playground in Little Hunting Creek Park. Now, I would like to proceed according to Robert's Rules of Order here, and that tells me that I would need a motion and a second to open up discussion. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. So now we'll open it up for discussion. Now, in that connection, in addition to the members of the council, I have a list of 11 people who have signed up to speak. And I don't know this for a fact. I just kind of suspect it's true that probably all of them want to speak to this playground issue. So let's proceed with the discussion by the council members first.
Well, I'll go ahead and start off. This is Greg. Initially, I was in favor of the playground at the Little Hunting Creek Park, and I did a complete 180. I want to start off by saying, of course, I love the comments from our citizens, and we always welcome comments from our citizens, and I look forward to hearing from them. But I'd like to explain why I did the 180 and what my reason is behind that. And so, yes, I do like to have a playground. I think it's great to have that. But I just think that from safety and health reasons, this particular location is very, very wrong for it to be there. It's too close to a very busy street. The fact that the traffic cruises by there at 60 and I'm sure even more than that miles per hour. And then at rush hour, people are frantically trying to get past City Hall. You got that great big building sitting there, City Hall, and then it's too close, I think, to the children who will be playing there. There's also pollution and noise factor, but I worry mostly about the potential for an accident. I take that very, very seriously. I think that the first and foremost thing that we do as a city is to provide safety for our residents and health for our residents. And so that's why I did a complete 180 on it. I do like the idea of using the little Hunting Creek Park. Of course, we want to use it. It's underutilized, but there are a lot of things that we can use it for. But there are a lot of other places that we can put this playground as well. And it's not, I don't know if many of the citizens realize the cost of it when they gave their opinions. It's not 100,000 as was originally projected. It's more like close to $250,000 by the time you figure in all of the peripheral things that go along with it. From a practicality viewpoint, it would be in the flood zone area. And that area, the last time we had a really bad storm, that water came way up there. And I don't have a picture with me, but I've seen a picture recently of that, and it was significant. So I happen to have been involved with the selection of the playground for Sutherland. I live in Sutherland and love Sutherland, and we have taken our grandkids to that many, many times. It's not used all that much, so it's beautiful, and it's withheld the weather. It's probably been there, I don't know, 16 years, 15 years or so, and it's held up well, but it's just not used that much. So, and if we can justify putting picnic tables in the Harrods Creek Park, then why not put the playground there? I had a resident, I don't know if he's here tonight, but I had a resident from our fire department call me the other day and expressed great concern about the safety of it. And I liked his idea of putting swings, starting off with swings, and we could do that at relatively low cost, certainly nowhere near 220,000. And we could do that, and we could put those in Cowley Park. We could put those in Harrods Creek Park. So I think also too, the current plan is too restricted. I looked really, really hard, and I know Sarah and I talked about the scale of the playground, and I'm looking at a picture of it right now. And Sarah, thank you for the information that you provided. And I did read the information from the firm that provides this equipment. And I look at it as a good marketing plan on their part. They say that it's good up to 12-year-olds, but I swear I just don't see that. It looks much, much smaller in scale to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not expert in children's and what age they use the equipment, but just for me, it looks like it's a lot of money for something that would be really for kids of a lower age. So those are my basic concerns about it. It's just really all about safety for the kids. And I just don't want to approve something that is so potentially dangerous at Highway US 42. Thank you so much.
Well, as I understand it, we're talking about a resolution that would authorize us to seek a matching grant that would only come into play if are we actually addressing the merits of the playground now? Or are we addressing whether to put in an application for a grant?
It's a very good question. This resolution does not specify a location either. And my question is, if we applied for the grant and got it, would we necessarily have to do anything?
The only thing I'll add is that when you do apply for the grant, the location is part of that. So that the grant itself, you do have to do because you do historic property searches and whatnot. So I just want to put that out there that when applying for the grant, it is for a particular location.
Sarah,
and I can address, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, are we committing that we've made the decision we're going to do this? Or are we saying, give us the grant and a match and we'll decide if we're going to move forward or not?
Yeah, that was
right. So yeah, so correct. So this is just like with KIPTA, the US 42 working group, they actually applied for the KIPTA stuff actually without the council because you could turn it down. Now the council ended up talking and approving that. But this is the award doesn't happen until December or January of this coming year. So December 21, January 22. So that was in your all's email stuff. So this is just like with anything, you know, You don't want to take money from someone else, but it's not awarded for another, 8 months.
So I still am not clear. I think I know the answer, but I don't feel like I've got a real understanding. If we apply for this grant, are we saying we're moving forward with this, with or without the grant? Or are we saying if we get this grant, we're going to do this?
What you're saying for this is that you have in reserves 50% of the money that you're asking for the grant. By applying for the grant, you're saying, I want the grant and I would like to do the project. Now,
okay,
just like with anything, you can change your mind. I wouldn't recommend that. I'm not saying go into it to apply if the answer is, I have no desire.
Okay.
To
So it
put
sounds
that
like we are
item there.
addressing the merits of the playground in Harrods Creek Park, Little Harrods Creek Park this evening. And with that said,
Yeah.
I respect Greg immensely, I respect his opinions and his views. I disagree in the extreme with regard to the safety issue. There is no place that's perfectly safe. And we take our children with us to Kroger. They could dart out into traffic. All up and down, there's activity all up and down US 42 with children with their parents. And I think Little Harrods Creek Park with parents with small children is a safe setting. It's a good setting. I think the overwhelming sentiment from people I've heard from is in favor of this. Greg mentioned going with his grandchildren to the playground in Sutherland. I've got 6 granddaughters, 4 of whom would be eligible by age, or 3 of whom would be eligible by age for a playground for small children. And I would welcome the opportunity to have a playground in Little Harrods Creek Park, and I would use it. And I know many other people feel that way. I know people without children and without grandchildren feel that way. But it would be an asset for our community. So I'm strongly in favor of the playground as proposed.
Any other discussion before we call on our
Yeah,
resident?
John, this is Frank. I'd like to say something, and I can
Okay.
say personally and professionally, I think this is probably the worst place for a child's playground within the city. And I say that based on safety and health. The safety issue is pretty apparent. When you're putting a bunch of small children in an area between a heavily trafficked highway and a creek, which is prone to flooding and at times is covered, it's a recipe for disaster. The health issues, I don't think anybody would argue that this is probably the most polluted area in the city. You've got the aerosol pollution, you've got the dust pollution, and of course, the noise. Now, my backyard is on 42, and I can tell you, it's dusty and it is noisy. And this thing would not be conducive to a healthy environment. Now, I know Doug has spoken to some folks. I've concentrated on the medical profession, and 100% of them say that is a bad idea. Now, I'll also say that for years, starting maybe 3 years ago, I've asked why we don't have a playground in Hunting Creek Park or Harrods Creek Park, excuse me, because I think that's the place for it. I'm not opposed at all to a playground, but this is the wrong place.
Just from the parks, just mention before it gets too carried away with the Harrods Creek Park for the location. So Harrods Creek floods, we're talking base level 3 to 4 feet out there. We're talking the trees that are planted almost exclusively underwater. And that is a lot of water. I mean, it undercut and ripped out the canoe launch. So I'm obviously for it, so I'm not trying to get in the way of anyone's opinions, but I did want to hop in there just with the Harrods Creek Park is hands down the most water and the worst flooded areas in all respects. I just put that out there before we get too carried away.
Well,
Something to think about with.
You're assuming
Go
the
ahead.
only place for it is the flat area, which I assume, just a little between the
No,
creek.
no. I mean, up high, you'd have to cut down so many trees, and I'm not sure if that's probably a discussion for another time. But I hear you, Frank. I hear what you're saying with putting it up higher. You would have to clear. You'd have to clear all the dead trees around, obviously, and clear the trees. Ron could probably speak to the amount of sort of fallen trees out on the red and green trail. But I hear what you're saying with that. I just wanted to make sure no one was thinking.
My concern is that I
base.
think there are viable options within the city which would address Doug's concerns with his grandchildren. And I have grandchildren here in the city. And actually, my kids grew up here, and we used Hayes Kennedy, and we're very comfortable doing that. It's got a lot of advantages over something like this. So, but I would support
What's the park?
anything, swings, put them in, let's say, put a year's worth of swings in somewhere, Cali Park, down Harrods Creek Park, and see if they are utilized. And, but not here, not next to the highway.
This is Greg again. A lot of people have called me in support of it, and I listened to them all. And a lot of people have called me in opposition to it as well. But I'm making my own decision on this, and I'm looking at the cost. So approximately 100 grand for the equipment. And again, to me, it's small scale. I know it says that they go up to 12-year-olds, but I doubt that. I think it's a marketing thing. And then there's another 43,000 for a poured in place rubber surface, which I guess that's good, but I don't know how that would hold up in a flood zone when it floods there, and it will. And then there's another 2,200 for fencing, and I don't mean to go on too long, but let me just hit on a few things. But there's 23,000 for a concrete pathway, another 13,000 for a pad for a gazebo, and we haven't talked about a gazebo yet, but that's in here in the 220K. And then there's 30,000 for benches, 30,000 for benches that will go around the equipment, and another cost for the gazebo. And I love gazebos; they look beautiful, but we'd get a lot more use out of some kind of a rectangular structure. It would hold more people. But anyway, that's beside the point. So, but we have so many other things to spend our money on, and to go through and ask for $220,000 for this, I don't know. I just don't see it. I'm like Frank. I'd love to have a playground for our kids, but they do have Hayes Kennedy, and there are other playgrounds around. But I just don't think, Cali Park might be good. Start off with some swings, and we could do that for a fraction of this cost, a fraction of it. So that's my final word on that. Thank you for listening.
The other factors that has not been discussed is the study that we're having done on the City Hall parking lot. We right now, it hasn't begun to come to fruition. And we know that we are going to expand the parking lot. There is the rectangle that has been drawn on this, but right now we don't know that rectangle that's been drawn on this playground graphic is compatible with what's going to be recommended. In fact, there's an issue attached to that. We've asked them to look at a larger turning radius around the dumpster. In the event that that happens, that may push the parking lot out further there. The other issue that came out with the parking lot expansion is the concept that we are in a zone that's protected with riparian laws, and that in order to do anything, if we take land from someplace, we have to put it back someplace else. And right now, we have no idea what that means in regard to parking lot expansion. And I don't know if it's been considered in regard to this grant, but it sounds like the process is anything but simple or anything but cheap. And in the event that we have to go through this process for the parking lot, we'd have to go through it for the playground.
I'd like to turn for a few minutes to some of the citizens that have signed up to speak, and I'd like to start with,
John,
yeah,
John, Don was speaking.
I'm sorry.
Okay. You hear me now?
Yeah,
The playground at Little Hunting Creek Park seemed to have gotten a lot of public comment, and the comments are favorable. The comments are from I think, people with children that look forward to using it. I suspect these people have factored in some of the downsides, as including proximity to 42, pollution from the automobile traffic. But I don't think we should ignore those comments. And for that reason, I think we should vote for this. I'm for this park.
That was such a slanted survey that I don't think there's much validity that could be ascribed to that. And I can say,
Well, actually, the survey was sent to the heads of all the homeowners associations, who in turn sent them to all the residents.
I understand.
Let me finish. And I apologize. I interrupted you. You go ahead, Frank.
No, please.
Yeah, and I apologize for interrupting you. The survey was sent, or the question was sent to the heads of all the HOAs at the mayor's suggestion. Those HOA heads sent them to their residents. Their residents responded. And it wasn't some pre-selected group of people who we thought would, not me, I didn't do it, but who the people who prepared that survey, or Sarah at the mayor's suggestion, asked the question and people responded. All comers, doctors, lawyers, people with children, people without children, and they responded 90% in favor of the park next to US 42.
Well, I would disagree with that, because what they were given was a list of 4 things. Some people said, geez, I like the gazebo. Oh, okay, let's have a path. Disregarding the other things.
Pickleball court.
Or whatever, yeah, this bocce, whatever, those type of things. So, and Hunting Creek was not included, and Hunting Creek is a big area as far as our residents go.
Well, the homeowners, I live in Hunting Creek and I received the survey.
Yeah, but you have an HOA for.
It's not the only HOA.
So to address that, so to address, because I made the flyer, so I'll address that. It wasn't, so when you send out a request for information, you're obviously going to put all the items that are in it. So I think, sorry, I'm getting a lot of texts and emails. And those are from residents currently watching. So you send out all of the info in the plan, and I'm happy to read, because Frank, I'm not sure, maybe you didn't read the flyer. It was not the one that was for the council meeting where I talked about, hey, no one's been able to get a parking lot expansion, and how I bootstrapped it together because we could maybe agree on something. That was not the one that went out to residents. So this was strictly
No, you
hey,
sent
we're
us
putting a
that.
park. Yeah, no, yeah, so Sandra, you definitely got it. Frank, I think I forwarded it to you, and it was with all the residents. So as long as you're looking at the correct one, but obviously you send a plan to get everybody's idea. So I don't think that part's slanted. And I live in Hunting Creek, and I did want to wait for a public meeting. I said, hey, good or bad, you put it out to everyone, let's get a public meeting. So that was, the mayor said, hey, and I respect that opinion. He said, hey, let's do our homework and really see if there's any interest. And the way that you can do that is through the HOAs, because I would go to door. I mean, I've been door to door in Hunting Creek in the last month, not for the playground. So I've probably visited well over probably, I don't know, 150 houses since the beginning of the year on unrelated matters to this, to just go chat about some other stuff that's coming up. So I'm well aware that Hunting Creek wasn't asked, but the people who were asked, it's indiscriminate. No one knew whether they liked it or not. So to laugh at people's comments, even if they want pickleball, there are people up at the club as of 20 minutes ago playing pickleball. I wouldn't laugh at them. They're citizens and they pay taxes. So
Well,
they also,
no,
Frank,
I have
wait a
to
moment.
interrupt.
They
Who was
also write
laughing?
emails. you both were. We're laughing about pickleball and bocce ball. And
Actually, we
so
weren't doing
The,
that. We
the
were talking
point,
about
Sarah,
people
the
wanting
point
other
was,
things.
the point was there were 4 elements to this quote survey. And people came back and put in additional, this would be nice, that'd be nice, those things. The survey wasn't really directed to an objective response. And anybody that's ever participated in developing a survey would find this thing invalid. As a matter of fact, I talked to one of the guys that was my friends who did it professionally, and he laughed at it as something that you could rely upon for making financial decisions.
well, there are 75 people who didn't find it funny, but if we want to talk about the validity of survey, then my recommendation to you would be to have brought it up, and then we could evaluate that. Now, it wasn't that people were saying, I don't like the park, but I do want a dog park. It's, I like these ideas. And many people went to the effort to list the individual items. Now, I spent multiple hours going through the individual emails, and I literally have a list of names and exactly what items they liked and what they didn't, so that you all could get the most information. I also forwarded them all to you all, good and bad. So I'm not trying to argue your point or my point. I just want to clarify that your misrepresentation, like you sent to a letter to 15 residents that you know don't like it in Hunting Creek, to state very misleading facts. So you said attached are also several thoughtful comments. So I assume you attached the 7 negative comments from other citizens on the subjects. Numerous other comments have been received, which are essentially one-liners in support of the concepts, but which don't address need, practicality, options, or expense. That's 75 emails that you lumped into, quote, numerous other comments. So you attached 4 opinions and then said numerous other comments. Now, I do find that misleading. So I think there can be a little bit of opinion on give and take there, but I just want to make sure we're factually speaking about the same things.
Well, we are, because I stand by that statement. One-liners, a one-liner response to a survey doesn't really give you much in the way of information.
There were only 14 people who responded with a, yes, I like the park. So of 75, now we're talking about 14. I'm still not going to invalidate any actual taxpayer. I will not do that. I am only here to represent them. That's why I'm a little bit heated about you saying, well, they're just one-liners. We didn't ask them. If I say, Frank, do you like the club? And you say yes, I'm not going to invalidate you. You're a member. I assume now if I say, Frank, do you like the playground? And you give me a full book about why you don't, I expect that, because you're trying to say no and you want to give reasons why. So from a person who took psychology and political science, I could walk laps around you on this opinion, but and why it's not making a lot of sense. But respectfully, I think, you know, maybe just don't speak poorly about the citizens who responded to it, is what I'm saying.
John,
All the council
John, can I be
people,
recognized? John?
Sure. Yes.
I can tell emotions are getting a little high here. Let me try to go back to what Don said. And absolutely, we are concerned about what our citizens have to say. But absolutely, I agree with Frank. And I'm looking at the flyer that went out. And it doesn't mention anything about cost. And so when we're asking anybody for an opinion, you're going to get the best opinion when you give all of the information. And this is very slanted, actually. And it says that things like Prospect is exploring, and it sounds like the whole city is doing this, and it's not. So it is slanted. And so I think the comments from the citizens, although of course they're important, and of course we want those. But if I didn't know better, and if I got this, I would think that, oh, the city is behind this and we must have the money to afford it. And it must be something that the entire council has agreed to, when in fact, we have never, this is the first time that we've discussed this. So that is what I would say to that, Don. I agree with you. Of course, we want to know what our citizens say, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them too. But it is slanted, and that's, I think that's.
I'm going to suggest that at this point, each of the council members have had an opportunity to express their opinions. They've been expressed pretty clearly. And this may be a good time to turn to citizens who've joined the meeting for purposes of making comments.
All right, the first citizen who signed up to speak, I'm going to call on former Mayor Todd Everly. Been very patient. Todd, would you like to speak to the council?
Yes, okay, I guess I'm on. I get a little bit of an echo, so I'll talk slowly. I can provide some background on this, but I will precede it by saying that I think a playground is a good idea. So you know where I'm coming from. But the history on that, what I undertook when I was mayor, is congestion mitigation air quality grant from the Regional Planning Authority, KIPTA. And we had submitted that as a grant to improve Little Hunting Creek Park. But that stemmed from a priority of putting a multi-use path through the park and would allow an alternative way to get to City Hall. To the City Hall, the police department, and the library is only now accessible by motor vehicle. So my view on this 12, 15 years ago, that this would be, if we connected Fox Harbor Road entrance across Little Hunting Creek and access that to City Hall. Now, there were a few improvements as well as the trail itself, which would be a multi-use trail for walking, bikes, and otherwise. So and with the crosswalk at 42, the idea was that would not only open Fox Harbor, but Hunting Creek Estates. And with the crosswalk, it would open bicycle and pedestrian access from Sutherland, Innisbrook, Smithfield Green, the post office, and commercial areas. So I appreciate the effort that the people have made in support of improvements to Little Hunting Creek Park, which I think is a park that is the feature of Prospect that most people see when they drive home to Oldham County. It's a beautiful park. I really doubt that it's dangerous for small children. With the provisions that have been made, I think are adequate. And I suppose, could consider Cowley as an alternative, but I see no reason to not pursue a grant unless we're not sure that we are going to accept the grant, which may damage our position in future grant pursuits. But I've lived here for over 2 decades, and now I'm an empty nester, Harriet and I, and I have seen in the last 5 to 10 years a turnover of properties to families with children, unlike us. And I think they have a sincere desire to see a playground that we can call our own. So I think it's a new time in Prospect to catch the ring for development of our city for future generations and embrace the maturation of our city from an outlying area to a force for progressive growth in our region. So I appreciate the opinions, but I think the congestion mitigation air quality grant, the CMAQ grant, was well intended. It's a little different than this grant. And our CMAQ grant was considered probably likely awarded until federal funds were frozen. So I think Little Hunting Creek Park will continue to be considered for improvements. We used to have a baseball backstop mesh, which Ron Condiff will certainly remember, and everybody wanted it torn down. And I said, well, I see people using it. So the park is now used for picnics. I don't think any of the people that have used it or organizations that have used it have had any fear of gas fumes or cars flying over from the road. I think it is a good place for that. I think we should hang on to the idea that maybe we should have a playground somewhere if we don't have it there. So that's my brief history of where, and in my opinion, as to where we should be with this. So, thanks.
David Holmes, do you want to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a few comments. I'm a citizen of Prospect, and I'm a member of the city's Park and Recreation Committee and was involved in a lot of the workup on the plan that Sarah has presented to the council. And I think that there's been some unfortunate comments by several council members that are inaccurate and not complete in their description of the plan. As to the flooding issue, Ron Condiff has told us the location for which the playground will be actually placed in the plan that Sarah presented to you has not flooded in 20 years. This is somebody who works for the city of Prospect and has observed that area on a daily basis. As to the safety of that location, I don't think you have adequately described the steps that were taken to make the playground safe. The playground in the design that Sarah has presented to you will have a fence around the playground equipment. Inside the fences where the playground is, there will be benches for the parents to sit and observe their children playing. Outside the fence line, it's 150 feet to US 42 from the playground. There is another rail fence between that at the top of the hill there. There is a dip by the playground, and there is a hill that you have to go up before you get to 42, where you get the rail fence there. The Parks and Recreation Committee recommended that we put shrubbery on the park side of the rail fence by 42 that will act as a barrier so that you could not go through, climb over the fence and get to 42. So for a child who is playing, and this playground is designed for our 2 to 12, 2 to 10-year-olds, you will have to go through one set of fences and pass, hopefully, the parents or the adults that are monitoring you. Then you will have to go approximately 150 feet up a hill through shrubbery and over top of another fence before you get to 42. So I think some of the safety concerns that have been addressed here have not been accurately reflected as the plan for the playground has been presented to you. One of the other challenges that I make to you all as a member of the Parks and Recreation Committee is to the council people who have said that they're all in favor of a playground. Get involved, find an area that you think we should have it in, and let's go ahead and build it. I all too often hear the activity of Prospect being all talk and no action. And I think tonight is a prime example of that, where the citizens of Prospect want to have a playground built, but all we get from council is why we can't build it instead of why we should build it. Prospect, as the former mayor is talking about tonight, is changing the demographics. Younger people are moving in. They have young families. We are not addressing the needs of the young families. I'm 73 years old. I won't play on the playground, but my grandchildren will, and I would like them to have an opportunity to do that in Prospect. If we don't address the needs of the younger families that are moving into Prospect, Prospect will not continue to grow. It's that simple. So I hope you all who are making the comments against having the playground will become actively involved in the Parks and Recreation Committee and start addressing some of these so that we can have the playground that 90% of the people in Prospect by the survey have said they want. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Is there a Melissa Cahill here? No. Is there a Kyle Lewis here? No.
Yes, this is Kyle Lewis. Can you all hear me fine?
Yes.
Well, Kyle Lewis, I'm the secretary of the Fox Harbor Neighbor Association. I thought I was just going to say something short and sweet, I guess, just to say that Paul Davis emailed you all to tell you of our unanimous support. I'm chiming in tonight to reiterate and express that unanimous support from the Fox Harbor Neighborhood Association. And yeah, we strongly agree with the proposal. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Can somebody mute their mic, please?
David, do you
Thank
mind
you.
muting your mic?
Thank you. Yeah, that's much better. So yeah, we strongly support the proposal. It would really enhance the appearance and recreational opportunities for children, families with children in the area. You know, I hope this is actually a first step. I hope there's additional projects to improve public spaces. You know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but you know, why not sidewalks or improving other trails to make them paved and more accessible for more folks. Because I want this community to be a great community for families. You know, I look around at other cities. One that comes to mind that I think is doing an excellent job of building excellent amenities, public amenities, is Anchorage. They're doing great jobs with their parks and their playgrounds. Why aren't we as well? Why is there so much resistance in our city? These are, I think, really important amenities because you can almost think of the housing market as competitive. We were talking about, having competitive salaries for employees. Why not look at the housing market as well? Is we have to provide the amenities that people, young families with children, want and to move into the area. And I am aware of some other families in the area that have moved out because other cities are perhaps more enticing with better public amenities. I didn't think I was going to go on this long, but there's some other things that were kind of raised that I do want to kind of speak to. One of them was this safety issue. I didn't realize this was such a contested or issue, but the concern of safety, I just don't think is there, because children already use that park. I take my kids down there. We did an Easter egg hunt down in that park. There's a Dairy Queen right across the street. I think that Dairy Queen is probably sited even closer to 42 than what the playground's going to be sited to. And there's people eating ice cream and walking out into the grass area. And then also too, the Fox Harbor Neighbors Association has their annual picnic at that park every year, and nobody's had a serious concern about kids running into 42 just because of how it's kind of set up with the fence, and it's sloped in that area. It almost discourages people to go in that direction. And then also too, if there is this overwhelming concern for children in the area, then why are we even currently encouraging people to go to the park by mowing the area and making an area for people to play and having benches there? If safety was seriously a concern, why wouldn't we put a budget forward to pull out the benches so people don't go there, so children don't run into the street? It just seems kind of odd that safety is coming up now. Then also too, mentioning the can you all still hear me? Just give a thumbs up. Okay. Mention the surveys also is please don't downplay the one-liners. I think I might have given a one-liner as well because it was a good proposal. I mean, if somebody's doing a good job, you say good job. You give them a high five and you keep going. It's not. There wasn't much to critique at that point, and I think that's how a lot of other people in responding to the survey felt. So don't kind of dissect those responses or discount them because it was a good proposal. Good job. I really didn't have much to add to it. And then one last thing also too is the idea of putting in a set of swings to see if there's a park that we need to, if there's enough interest to going forward. Please do not just put in a set of swings that will be setting us up for failure, especially when all of these other cities or neighborhoods nearby are putting in excellent amenities. Why would I take my family of 4 ranging in different ages to a set of swings where 2 of them won't be able to use the swing and the other 2 that can use the swings will get bored of it real quick, when I could drive a little bit further and go to a better park with more amenities that all of my children could participate in. And we have to, and going back to that competition thing is we, in a way, we have to keep up with the Joneses. If we want our community to be viewed as a community like other communities, we have to keep up with the Joneses and provide good public playgrounds and trails. And then one last thing too is in a way this project almost bridges or makes our public amenities that we have even more enticing, because it kind of, right now we have the trails, the hiking trails on one side of the stream, and then we have the library on the other side with the city hall, and it connects those, and it provides more amenities, more access to people visiting the area. And I think that's a really good feature. I really didn't think I was going to say that much. All I wanted to do is chime in and say, hey, Fox Harbor and Haver Association supports this unanimously, and that's it. But I felt compelled to say a little bit more. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Kyle. Is Nick Holmes there?
Yes, sir. This is Nick Holmes.
You're on the air.
Really, I'm glad that Kyle kept talking so long because he said everything that I wanted to say. I really appreciate the thought that's gone into this design. And I have an 11-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, and an almost 2-year-old daughter. And we would be thrilled. We live in Hunting Creek. We'd be thrilled to make use of the park, especially if it had amenities that the kids would be attracted to. We hike on those trails. I like the idea that the former mayor mentioned of connecting the neighborhood across the creek as well. So you'd have kind of a direct pedestrian route as well as the increased parking near the city hall. Yeah, I support it wholeheartedly, and I feel like most of us have enjoyed an ice cream cone at Dairy Queen with our kids or with our grandkids. And if you felt comfortable doing that, this would be even safer than that exercise with additional fencing and, landscaping. And I think it would just be a really attractive entrance to our city. Thank you all for putting the time and thought into addressing it.
Well, thank you for your comments, Nick. Is Ron Holloway present? No. Susan Nicholson present? No. How about Troy Bruce? Is he present? No. These are people who signed up to speak. Joanne Shern. Not there. Now, I don't have to ask if Lynn Granger's there because I saw him. Did he go away?
Thank you. Yeah,
Oh, there
thank
he
you,
is.
Mayor. And as most of you know, I'm part of the Parks and Recreation Committee as well. I live in Bridgepoint, and our house is right behind our swim club. And we have had a very similar playground there, I know at least 20, 25 years or longer. And I just want to comment, it gets used all the time. You've got parents bringing the small ones, you've got grandparents bringing them, it's probably 50-50. I will agree the ages tend to be maybe 3, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they have a blast over there. The one we put in, with the swim club put in, the good thing over the years hasn't required much maintenance. There's a little sun fading, but it's done very well. For the kids that come there, you also have the adults. It's kind of like a meet and greet social spot. I mean, for every child that's being brought there, there's probably a parent bringing 1 or maybe 2. So if you've got 8, 10 kids over there, you've probably got 6, 7 adults too. It adds to all of this. From a safety standpoint, the smaller kids, mom's going to stand about 5 feet away from them as they play on the sliding boards and all that. A little bit older kids, they stand further back. But every parent, grandparent with kids, you're watching them constantly. The other thing too, I know the comments regarding like rush hour traffic and all, most of the times this is being used between rush hour periods, being used on the weekends. I don't think you're going to see families over there, 8 in the morning or around dinner time, either kind of thing. From a pollution, I know that came up. I'm probably 100 yards from 265. I mean, my goodness, all the stuff comes off that. It will get used. I think we'll all have fun with it. One thing I'm hearing, it sounds like maybe Dairy Queen ought to kick in a few bucks to help build this thing. So, but I encourage you to pursue this and put this in place. I think you'll be quite surprised at how much use it'll get. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Can you hear me? Okay, now can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
good. I've called all the names of people who had signed up to speak, except for one who wants to speak on a different topic, and I'll put that off for a little bit. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call for a roll call vote on this resolution that has been moved and seconded. And I'll start with Sandra.
No.
Frank?
No.
Don Gibson?
Yes.
Doug Farnsley?
Yes.
Greg Hulsman?
No.
Sarah Odell?
Yes.
All right. Well, we have a 3-3 vote. This is the first time in my 8 years that I've seen the council evenly split. I have thought very hard about this, and I'm impressed by the outpouring from residents, and I'm going to cast a vote yes. So it's 4-3. And the motion carries. Now, this resolution is to enable application for a grant. And that's as far as it goes, as far as I can see, but I hope it goes forward. That is the last topic on the agenda, but we have an Orrin Gudmundson that signed up to speak. I don't know if he's present or not. I guess not.
Don,
So
before we adjourn, can I bring up some new business, please, whenever you're ready?
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, but that's all right.
I'd like to request a discussion on a special meeting to discuss a resolution and possibly also property appraisals if you're ready to discuss those, but mostly just to address the US 42 safety study resolution. So would we all be available, say, would 1 week from now be enough time for everyone to read through the MOA?
Let me ask the question that some members of the council may have in their heads. What's the hurry?
Well, we just want to keep it moving. It's a
Hello, this is
process.
Warren. Can you hear me?
Who's that?
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Warren Goodmanson. Sorry, I had a little technical problem. I guess the first number I dialed didn't work.
Okay, Mr. Gudmundson, you're on the air.
Okay, thank you very much. So my comments are concerning the Breakers neighborhood and just some concerns that my family and friends have. We're in Innisbrook, and at the in the public discussions of the Breakers neighborhood, the developer was very clear that she did not want a gated neighborhood, and that was not part of the plan, and that it was going to be Eads Place and Sutherland Farm Road were going to be open. And some of you may or may not know that the pillars that have gone up on both Eads Place and on Sutherland Farm Road have originally had little wrought iron extensions on them. Those, at least on Sutherland Farm Road, gates have been attached. Those have not been attached on Eads Place, but I assume that's coming. And the roadway looks like there's a turnaround space and space for the gates to be open and for people to turn around. In a discussion with Joel Dock of Metro Louisville Planning and Design, says the roads are under the jurisdiction of Prospect. And my first question is, has Prospect approved or otherwise permitted those roads to be gated and closed off?
Answer is no.
Is this something that has been applied for?
No.
And will
No,
the
that
gates
doesn't-
remain?
Let me jump in. If the developer gates that community, those will not be public roads. They will not be cared for by Prospect. We have told her that. And we have also asked her to be sure to tell her purchasers that the city of Prospect will not be taking care of those streets in the event that she gates it.
So my concern and the concern of many of my friends and family is, since those are public roads, we would prefer they remain ungated and open.
They're not
as
public
it would be a
roads.
wonder.
They're not public roads. They have not been accepted by the city, and if she gates them, they won't be.
So I guess my question is, Prospect doesn't have a position on whether or not they're gated, or
It wouldn't matter if we did. Our position is that if she gates them, they will not be public streets.
my understanding from Metro Planning and Design is that they're currently public roads right now. Am
We've
I
never-
incorrect on that?
I'm not aware that they are public roads right now. I'm not even aware that they are roads.
Okay. Well, again, Joel Dock seems to indicate that they're public roads under the jurisdiction of Prospect.
When you say he seems to indicate, what do you mean by that?
That's what he has told my wife and I in several emails.
So you're saying that Mr. Dock
In
has
writing.
told you that they currently are public roads?
Yes, and that has been what my homeowners association has said, and that is what the developer has indicated. And my
Well, you had a
concern
board
is
member,
that
you had a board member, Don Grader, at a meeting together with your association's lawyer that we had with Ms. Gillizan just a few days ago. So he knows everything that I'm saying. And our city attorney, who's here tonight, has said also. Maybe I need to have a conversation with Mr. Dock because I don't think he understands the situation.
To my knowledge, they have not applied to have those streets dedicated. And I think we would know about it if they had, since we have the power to approve it or disapprove it. And again,
and that's exactly kind of what I'm getting at, is what is your all's intention of approval or disapproval if such a thing is asked for?
I already told you that if she gates that community, we will not accept those streets.
see, and that means they have to maintain them. So that means that the homeowners have to have an assessment each time they have a resurfacing of the road, or if they have any problems with the road, snow removal, etc. They have all those extra expenses, and it would be embarrassing for her because apparently she's advertised it as a gated community when in fact she does not have the right to do that. And if she's not, if she intends to dedicate the streets, it cannot be a dedicated, a gated community.
Now, Chris, whenever you said she has to apply to change the status of the roads, and
Right.
it made it sound like with the council. So what does that look like, and when do you think that would happen?
I have no idea, since we've not received any request.
And then if she doesn't apply, what's the, because I think with the
And then
the
we have
citizen-
not accepted streets as dedicated streets, and we have no responsibility over the maintenance, the resurfacing, the snow removal, etc. We have no responsibility for that.
So there's no repercussion. So I guess it sounds like what the Innisbrook resident is asking, and I apologize because I missed your first name. Sorry about that. That you're asking, hey, if it's going to come to us, and it sounds like she may not have to do that. And so then by default, the roads would become non-public roads and we would not take care of them. But it sounds like the concern is that the citizen would like to have them maintain open. And so are we going to have a chance outside of that meeting that was already had with her, where it sounds like she said she was going to gate them?
But she can gate them if she wants to.
We don't have any.
Yeah, we can't
No,
keep it.
actually, she indicated she didn't want to gate them, but
Well, she
that
changed her
what
mind.
I was told, okay, that's fine, and I understand that, gentlemen, but my question is, Joel Dock from Planning and Design Metro Council, and, you know, I was not privy to the meeting that Don Grader was at, and whatever. So my question is, ultimately, does not Prospect have any authority over whether they're gated or not?
Right.
I don't care about the maintenance. I'm interested in having open streets.
One of the issues that hasn't come up yet is time frame. And there is a finite number of that development that has to come online before this even becomes an issue. And when we dealt with Sutherland or Innisbrook, that number was somewhere around 85% of the dwellings had to have been constructed before this issue arose.
So she's already putting up the gates.
Mhm.
But we don't have any say over whether she gates it.
No.
That's what he's asking.
Chris, I think the gentleman's question is, does Prospect have the ability to prevent her from gating that community? I think that's his question.
Okay, I really don't, I do not think that we have that ability. I've practicing law here by the seat of my pants, which is not a good idea to do, and I'll be glad to look at that. But the only leverage we have is they have to dedicate the streets if they want us to maintain the streets. And that's the leverage we have. If she wants to make it a private gated community, my guess is she can do that, but I have not researched that. I'll be glad to do that if the mayor wants me to. I think it will be a very unfeasible situation for them if they have to go to their homeowners and tell them that we are not going to maintain those streets. And I think when they realize that situation will resolve itself. I just happened to be in Nashville with my son, who's a banker down there and lives in a really nice subdivision, $900,000 $1 million houses. And he told me that in his subdivision in Nashville that they had had some vandalism. So their homeowner association got together, lives in Williamson County, and they decided that they wanted to be a gated community. And when they reported back to the conversations they had had with the leaders down there, they gave up the idea. And the reason was that two things. They said that Williamson County had said they hated gated communities and they were not going to do anything to encourage gated communities. And the second thing was what we have pointed out, that he said his homeowners association said we would have to maintain the streets. We'd have to do the snow removal. We'd have to do the resurfacing. And they just dropped it when they realized that. And I think that same thing will happen here.
Chris, in addition, they have to pay the same taxes whether they do it or not.
That is correct. They get no offset on taxes at all.
What about trash collection?
And so if I could ask a more detailed question, because there are gates already on Sutherland Farm Road, what defines a gated community from a legal perspective? If they decide to close those gates at some point, does that mean it's a gated community? Do they have to formally ask for it to be a gated community? What is the process here?
Once they dedicate the street, then we would have the authority to tear down the barricade, I guess. They cannot barricade a street. If you let that happen, every subdivision in America would have barricades on every street so they didn't have through traffic, and society just wouldn't function. So no, once they dedicate it, then we will have control over it.
Is there a timeline based, it sounds like maybe tied into what Sandra, is that the piece you need to investigate is when this would come about, you know, when 80, Sandra, I missed the number, you know, 80 something % of the houses are there, or is that something you need to research, Chris, as to when this determination would be made?
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, right. I'll be glad to look into that.
I would be interested to know that, just because
I'll tell you
especially
that
the promise from the developer when she was holding public meetings and talking to us about what she would do, what she wouldn't do. She promised there would not be gates, and now there are gates hanging on the pillars. And it seems to me that we've been misled. Possibly, maybe these are just marketing tools. I don't know, but it's upsetting that, you know, we've been possibly misled about intentions. Maybe they're okay with maintaining the streets. I don't know, but it seems to me that Prospect would have an interest in keeping the community as open as possible. Egress. One of the things for Innisbrook, we do not have sidewalk access to the rest of the community. It's, you know, it would be lovely for me to have my girls be able to bike up to, you know, the coffee shop and restaurants and so on in a safe way, not having to get on the US 42, which is completely unsafe.
Right.
You know, and until there is a sidewalk program, at the very least, it would be nice to keep this open for the community so that we could have not have to drive to go half a mile or a mile to shops and restaurants and so on.
We're on the same wavelength, sir. And again, that's why we pointed out to Ms. Gilzan that what we did, and I think I'm fairly good at reading people. When she left, she really left in a huff. She realized she'd made a mistake. She wouldn't admit it. She claimed that she had done it before, and I have no doubt that she's done it before, but nobody called her hand on it. She's a typical developer that would rather ask for forgiveness than permission, and so, you know, she'll get away with anything that she thinks she can. I understand that, but we called her hand on it, and she's very much aware that she needs to advise every purchaser of what we've been talking about. And I think someone did show me one of the advertisements that they had for the lots, and they did advertise it as a gated community. And so, you know, that puts her in a bind, but I cannot believe that the homeowners association will want to bite off not having snow removal and having to maintain those streets. I think that's our weapon here, and ultimately, I think we'll win on it.
Okay, well, I appreciate those thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
For your questions. Any further business to come before the council tonight?
Yes, John, so you were saying about the resolution of special meeting. So I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I was just trying to keep it moving, and maybe we need a little more time. So, but you think maybe a couple of weeks would be sufficient time for you,
Well,
John?
it's up to the council. If the council wants to have a special meeting, we'll have one.
This would be for the resolution, which I think all of you have seen already. So would it be okay to meet on that, say, a week from today, maybe in the afternoon? Would that work?
Silence is deafening.
Oh.
Okay with me. I'll be there.
What about, how would 2 PM work on Monday, the 26th, everybody? Are you all there?
How much time are you talking about, Greg?
Well, hardly any time at all. I think we could do it, I'm gonna suggest a WebEx meeting, so it'll be real convenient. All we need to do is, approve the resolution, which is basically giving the mayor the power to sign the MOA. So I could send that out. Chris has already created the document.
The date's fine with me. It's up to the council.
Is
Could we make it
everyone,
at 3?
I'm sorry?
Could we make it at 3 on April 26th? 3 PM.
Sure. I'm good.
Okay,
That works for me.
works for me.
That's fine.
Okay, 3 o'clock
Okay.
on the 26th.
I won't be there, but you guys have enough people, so.
Okay. All right. Are we good? 3 PM on Monday, the 26th.
You got it.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Move, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
The ayes have it. You're adjourned.